Hey, everybody, welcome to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM in beautiful downtown Nanaimo. You know, we have the luxury of broadcasting all the way down to Duncan, all the way up to Campbell River, across to the Sunshine Coast and parts of Vancouver as well. Hey, if you've tuned in, thanks so much for doing so. We just love it to know you're out there for us. In the Zoom booth with me today is Lianne Ketcheson. She's with Avenir Memory Care, and we have lots to talk about. Welcome to the program, Lianne. How are you?
I'm great, Kathy. How are you?
I'm good. It's so wonderful to see you via Zoom. Our listeners can't see you, however, but it's wonderful to know that things are going great for you. How are things at Avenir?
They're fantastic. It's been great since April 1st. We've had a little relief on the COVID restrictions for long-term care. So that's been a great stepping stone for families that can now come in and visit their loved ones.
Yeah, I would imagine that was a really difficult time. Can you talk a little bit about, well, first of all, for our listeners who don't know what Avenir is, I have the luxury of knowing what it is, but our listeners may not. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what Avenir Memory Care is, the kinds of people that you have that are staying with you, and just an overall review of what it is you guys do.
Sure. Avenir Memory Care is a long-term community for seniors primarily who are dealing with cognitive impairment. So basically the umbrella of dementia. It was created by a family called the Craig family. In 1975, they were contractors, and after David, the owner, was visiting his own mother in a community in Victoria, he realized that coming from a builder's background, he could create something that was a little more social and beneficial to those living in long-term care. And he started building retirement communities in Vancouver, the Renaissance in Langley, and then it grew from there. And then he realized in Arizona, where they were snowbirding, that there was a need for memory care specifically. So he started building memory care communities in Arizona and in Canada. They actually live down in the Victoria way, so they are Canadian, but they have a home in Arizona as well. And now they have over 10, 13 communities, both in Canada and across the United States. So we were fortunate enough to have the first of its kind here in Nanaimo, where we have 3 levels of care. So we cognitively place our residents according to their abilities so that they can thrive socially in an environment amongst their peers, rather than everyone be put in together that have different levels of impairment. So we start off with beginning stage, then they would move up to intermediate and move into advanced. The neighborhoods are nice and small, they're very home-like. It's almost like a boutique memory care feel to it. We focus on what they can still do, so what activities they can still do, how they enjoy socially their meals. They have their private residence still with general neighborhoods where they share with their neighbors. So it's quite a unique approach to memory care. I've toured pretty much all of the complex care in Mid-Island, and I've never seen anything like it. So I'm proud to be part of what they're doing here.
And Lianne, you've been actually with Avenir for a number of years now. I know you took a little bit of a break, but overall, how long has it been actually that you've been associated with Avenir?
I started February 2017, before the building was actually open. So I've been here from the very beginning. It's been, 4 years this year.
I love that building. I've had the privilege, I was there at the opening. I've had the privilege of really, watching it develop and grow in our community. And it's been such a godsend, for lack of better words, for so many people. One of the things that I love about it is the familiarity that you have from floor to floor. How does that help in helping the residents live more comfortably?
That's a good point. It was strategically designed that every floor is identical to the next level of care, so that even though their suites may be in a different area, when they're moving and progressing through the disease, their surroundings look the same. So you'll go on to second, third, or fourth floor, and even the paintings are the exact same location. The kitchen, the settings, the furniture, everything is identical. So even when I'm on a different floor, I have to remind myself, like, what floor am I on? Because it looks exactly the same. And so that alleviates things like a feeling that they've moved to a completely different place. They recognize the surrounding, and it's much easier on them mentally.
So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, you said that there's various level of care. You know, Act 3, our show is really about teaching people some of the things that are associated with, aging and dementia and Alzheimer's. Well, I don't anticipate you to be the expert. I do, your vision and working with people. What do you see happen most often when people come to the residence?
What brings them here, you mean?
Exactly. Like what level, like how does somebody know that it's time to move into somewhere like Avenir?
Usually, there's been an incident, or the family hasn't seen their loved one in a while, or their spouse has passed on. And now it's clearer than ever that the person's struggling. So dementia, they say once the symptoms start, they've already been they had dementia and atrophy of the brain and plaques building in their brain years before symptoms are shown. And that usually can be hidden by a spouse, giving them their medications, doing the meals for them, driving and taking them places. And until that person's literally on their own, or the caregiver is burnt out, that's when they come to us. They don't necessarily always have a diagnosis, but they know that their family member is not remembering names, when to take their medication, they think they've ate already, or they walked to the corner store and had trouble finding their way back. The physician maybe has taken their license away and seen certain symptoms himself. So usually something's happened. There's been a progression in the disease where they're no longer capable to care for the person, or they're not safe at home anymore. So it's not just, like you and I walk into a room and don't remember why we came into the room, or, we forget somebody's name or a birth date. It's something much more than that. We can no longer determine hot from cold in the shower. We think we've ate. We start isolating ourselves because we have anxiety, not remembering people's names, not knowing if we're going to find our way to the grocery store and back. So it starts to become quite obvious that they're struggling. And that's when the family comes to us and says, I don't have a diagnosis. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't. But the physician in the family sees significant changes.
Yeah, I think that's really important to understand, is that it isn't just simply forgetting things. I mean, I'm postmenopausal, and I gotta say, I forget my keys and things all the time, but that's not the same. Jane Hope, of course, with the Alzheimer Society, has all kinds of really terrific programs. And I encourage people that are listening to the program, if you want to find out more, to go directly to the Alzheimer Society, and you can get all kinds of fantastic information. It's a Canada-wide organization, and so there's lots of information there available to you. But I think that it's important as well that, there's a fear of Alzheimer's, that people are going to have their loved ones forget them. Do you see that a lot?
The short-term memory is definitely what's affected. The long-term, you can show them pictures of when they were children or their parents, and they will be able to identify most of the time the past. But yes, in progression, like in higher advanced care, we do see they may mix up their husbands with their siblings or their parents, and have moments where they don't know who they are. That kind of fluctuates. It seems to come in and come out. They have good days and bad days like we all do. But that is the hardest, I think, for the families. That's where you see the families struggling, because they're losing that connection and they're not being able to create memories with them anymore, but they are still having moments with them. And you can see that when it clicks in who the person is, now that they've opened up and families can come up into their room, that physical touch and hugging, they know that that person is someone to them. They might not necessarily know who exactly they are or get them confused, but then they'll have a good day and they'll tell us, oh, my daughter came to see me yesterday. But in that visit, they might not have actually known that that was their daughter. It could have been their sister or their mom or someone from their past. But they still are able to share those moments, hold hands, and have that time together. So they're still creating so much value to the residents. It's just, yeah, it's hard for the families for sure.
Someone told me, actually, this is going back like a long, long time ago, but somebody had said to me that one of the things, sorry if you hear that in the background, that's my two Jack Russells. By the way, if for everybody who's listening, this is part of the Zoom experience. I've got two Jacks. If the postman goes by, the girls start a barking. If a bird flies in the weirdest place, something will happen. And so please, if you do hear some growling in the background, just ignore it. It's part of the experience. I also want to let people know that there is a little bit of a refurb. So if you're hearing Lianne double up a little bit, it is part of, unfortunately, it's the recording, but hopefully you can hear her relatively clearly. I know that at the time of recording, we certainly can hear her quite well. By the way, if you've just tuned in, you're listening to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. My guest is Lianne Ketcheson from Avenir Memory Care. This is also the time in the program where I suggest that you want to grab a piece of paper and a pen, because Lianne's got some great contact information. And if you have any questions, you're going to want to reach out. So feel free to grab a piece of paper and a pen while we continue our conversation. Before the interruption, my apologies, we were talking about, sort of, I think a lot of people watch movies where people have had this great loss of memory and people don't know unless they've experienced it for themselves. And there's this kind of vision where mom or dad doesn't remember them anymore, but they may remember them, but they remember them from a different time. Like you said, there's a thing about a memory where they may relate to their son or daughter. In their memory, they're 7 or 8 years old or 9 years old, but they're presenting as adults. And so there's that I don't know who you are segment, when perhaps if they could remember them at a young age, they actually do remember their family, right? Or is that a myth?
No, they'll see pictures of, we had a gentleman who, his daughter would come and visit all the time, and he would not recognize her. But then we'd go through a photo album and he'd be like, oh, there's so-and-so, and she was 3 years old. So he knows there's these people in his life, these symbolic people, but may not recognize the person when they're visiting that day. And then the next day they can have clarity. The disease progresses and levels out, but then they have good days and bad days. So just like us, if there's stressors in that day, if they're unwell or tired, that could affect it as well. Every day is kind of a mystery of what you're going to get, which makes it a hard disease, but also so heartwarming when you have those pockets of windows where there's clarity and they're clear and they're connecting. It just gets few and farther between as the disease progresses.
Do you see a lot of fear in the people that are living with the disease, or is it more in the family?
Both. I think it's both. It's such a difficult disease because in the beginning stages, they're aware something's not right. They know that, and they're frustrated as well, is not being able to remember how to do things anymore. Making that transition from home to long-term care is probably the most difficult on both. I'd say sometimes harder on the family, because we can see once the resident comes here and that stress is off them from leaving their home, especially men, I find, when they feel that they have to take care of the yard, take care of the finances and the bills and the hydro and things like that, they are always worried about the financial aspect of still being the caregiver to their spouse and looking after their home. So when they come in here, all that stress is alleviated. They don't have to worry about any of that anymore. They can focus on their health and the relationships with their neighbors. But it's still so hard for the family. And COVID made that quite difficult as well, because they couldn't just come in whenever they wanted and check on mom and dad. They had to put that trust in us. And we created a lot of connections through FaceTime, phone calls, setting up visits as soon as we could. in our visitation room and now opening it up into their residence room. So we tried to keep that connection through our Facebook page as well, posting like a window into the community, posting activities and things we were doing, because it is hard on both, but especially through COVID.
I was wondering about that, you know, when you're already dealing with a memory issue, how much more challenging was it for COVID?
Yeah, it was quite hard. Like I said, I think it's almost harder on the families because they are cognitively aware of what's going on. When our residents are in here and they're in their bubble, on their neighborhood, they're not wearing masks, they're still having activities, they're still having connection, but the families aren't having that connection as much during COVID. So I definitely saw it harder on the families than it was for the rest.
Yeah, I can certainly, I know with other independent living locations, it was very, very hard for so many people not to be able to see their families. And of course, you know, and not to date this program, but Mother's Day will be coming, you know, soon. Spring is happening soon. Some of our restrictions for COVID are beginning to lift, but we're starting to see, you know, still an increase of COVID. What do you plan on doing to help support during this time? Have you got a plan for new ways to engage with families?
Well, it was interesting because as soon as the long-term care restrictions were lifted, our restrictions out in the world were restricted. It happened at the same time, which is interesting. But I think they're basing that because of the seniors here have all had their second shots, and everyone here has that extra layer of protection. They're in their bubble. When families come to visit, they hand sanitize, they wear masks, and their visitors are limited to the 2 people and 1 child under 19. And all the staff has had their immunizations, and they also wash their hands, and we wear masks as well, unless we're sitting in our closed office. So the protection is such here that it's not like it's out in the community. And when families take them out, they have to abide by the community rules. So they're not taking them into their homes. They're going for walks down to the lake, maybe a drive-through to get an ice cream, and then they're coming back here into their bubble. So moving forward, we don't have anyone in the common areas. We still restrict it, but we allow them to just go to their room, direct one directional path, and then back down. And we're hoping that, knock on wood, we've had 0 infection here for staff or residents. It's been a safe haven. They're much safer in here than they would be if they were at home.
I certainly understand that, especially since everybody's been vaccinated and if the staff has as well, which, by the way, is really not common in the city. I don't think a lot of our care support workers have been immunized yet. I think we're still working on that. But certainly to know that the lion's share of, or if not all of your team have been immunized makes a huge difference. What's the average age of the people that are in your facility?
I would say 86. We have 2 ladies that both turned 100 in February, or actually over 100. One's 103.
Wow.
So the average, yeah,
That's
and they're
incredible.
thriving.
That's absolutely incredible. That's marvelous. Congratulations. Are you having an in-house bubble party for their celebrations?
We did.
Or?
Yeah, we did, and it's posted on our Facebook. They're bright. They have great conversations. They're doing amazing. That's one thing that is difficult when you work in this industry and you hear the media had, especially in the beginning with all the infections on the mainland, there was such a negative view of long-term care and that they were locked in and isolated. And I know for us, our residents have more fun than I do. There's constant engagement, music, live entertainment that we put in the parking lot. They can watch from their decks. There's painting. We started gardening. There's a walking group. And these people nothing's changed for them. They're not aware of what's going on outside these walls, which is a nice safe haven for them. And so it was difficult when you see stuff like that on the media because it doesn't represent every community. They're they're still thriving within these walls.
That's really good to know, actually. And I can see where there would be some confusion about that. You're quite right, especially because the infection rates on the mainland were very, very significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what kind of activities do people do while there? You mentioned a few, but can you elaborate a little bit on what's the life of an everyday person at Avenir?
Well, they have a recreation staff 7 days a week. I think they leave here at 6. So first thing in the morning, they have their breakfast and their care and their meds and get up, and they have individualized care plans here, which is fantastic. So everyone doesn't have to follow the same clock. Then they'll have an activity in the morning, which can be chair exercise, yoga, painting, gardening, walking group. They have lunch, then they have another activity in the afternoon. It varies. We're starting to get more of the live music back again. We're able to have it in the parking lot or Zoom. We have a big flat screen in the living room. St. Patrick's Day, they had full-on green non-alcoholic beer. They had music. They were dancing. We posted that on our Facebook as well. Everyone was dressed up in their green. It was, I went upstairs to do a little walkthrough, and I was like, wow, I want to stay up here for the afternoon.
No kidding. It sounds like it was so fun.
So they have so much fun up there. And every floor, the activities are different, obviously. So beginning stage, they can do more, mindful activities. And then intermediate might change a little bit. And then advanced, obviously, is quite different from second floor. So all our activities are based around the people that live on those neighborhoods. So there's always something different going on at all times. We have a lady on second floor and beginning stage that brought her piano. And the other day I went up and everyone was gathered around the piano and she was playing full-on piano and singing. So it's quite amazing. I feel honored to work with people with dementia. It's quite special.
Well, I'm curious about that, and please forgive my ignorance. I truly mean this out of respect and understanding, but I'm wondering, do they remember each other in their pods or groups? Do they at times forget the people that they've just spent the afternoon with? Is there any way that, what might that look like?
They do, because if we have a lady that moved from beginning stage to third and she had a table mate or someone she connected with, that person will ask, where did they go? And they'll be looking for them. And when pre-COVID, we would get all the floors together for, say, a music concert or something. Right now, they stay in their bubbles on their neighborhoods. But they do ask, where did Mary go? Or where did John go? And so that proves that they're creating these connections here, not only with the staff, but with their neighborhood. This is a generation that borrowed a cup of sugar from their neighbor. So they very much, even when families say my dad or mom's not a joiner, they definitely want to be able to have that option to come out and maybe watch, maybe not partake, but they definitely have their table mates, their neighbors, people that they connect with. And that's proven when someone moves to another neighborhood, they're actually asking, what happened? Did Mary move? Where did she go? And then we try and connect them through other ways. So when we're able to open up the neighborhood, we reassure them that they'll be connected again. And it shows that they actually do make connections.
Can they make phone calls to each other within that? If someone's upstairs or downstairs, do they have that ability?
We do, yeah. Yeah, they could do that. And we also, some of the families have actually joined and gotten to know each other through the connections that the loved ones have had as well. And they can chat too about how's mom, how's dad, and share information. They could phone up. We could set up a FaceTime if they wanted. We have the capability to connect through each neighborhood.
So do you find, is there a lot of myths around Alzheimer's and dementia? And if so, what is the most common myth that you see?
I think it's just the general understanding of what dementia is, because Alzheimer's is one of the most known forms of dementia. So dementia is the umbrella, and underneath it is Alzheimer's, Lewy body, Parkinson's can lead into dementia, frontal lobe dementia, there's alcohol-induced dementia. I think that, sorry, my phone fell. So that's the biggest one, is when I ask someone when they call in, so has your dad gotten a diagnosis of dementia? Do you know what kind? Oh, I don't know. Or, oh, it's Alzheimer's, which is dementia. So it's just, before I worked here, obviously, I would have assumed dementia and Alzheimer's were two different things as well. All of it is cognitive impairment, basically, affecting different parts of the brain, and that's where it's diagnosed into different areas, and each one presents differently as well.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying completely. I'm going to get you to move your phone a little bit closer if possible. While you're doing that. It fell on the floor. There you go. Perfect time for station identification. So you have tuned in to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. I'm Kathy Holmes. I'm so glad to be your host for this program in the Zoom booth with all the technology quirks and sounds in the background and barking dogs and all of the stuff that makes this show so very unique. Welcome to the program. We're really, really glad you're here. So Lianne Ketcheson from Avenir Memory Care is here. We're talking about Alzheimer's and dementia and the wonderful, wonderful residential care that is available here in downtown Nanaimo. It is an extraordinary building. It's bright, it's alive, it's so tastefully decorated, and you have a new director. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about the management change, a recent management change?
Yes, Tina Douglas has come to us with a vast amount of experience. She most recently was at Nanaimo Seniors Village for the last year, and we were so thankful to have her. She joined us about a month ago, brought her expertise and her patience, and we're very lucky to have her.
I remember Brendan very well. Brendan has moved on to bigger and better things back east, but it is, he brought such a light to the entire to the feeling of the building as well. And Tina seems to be the same kind of person. She seems to have a lot of high energy and really loves what it is that she does. The residents are very fortunate to have her indeed. Tell us more about, some of the highlights of, or maybe you have, I don't know if this is possible or not, but do you maybe have a highlight of one of the seniors perhaps, or one of the members of your community that have just inspired you in your time there? And I mean, because as I said, you've been there for a while now, so almost since the beginning. I'm sure that people change, they come in and out, and there's different things that happen, but has there been a couple of inspiring things that have happened that have made you really step back and go,
Well, honestly, every time I walk up on the floor, I'm introduced to either something that shows me the difference that we're making and the challenges maybe a resident is having. For me, I've had quite a few, but our very first resident, his name was Pete, and he was young. He was only 63. And before he left, obviously the disease progresses, and he was having some struggles and frustrations, and he was pacing, and it was difficult to, we were in a situation where things were changing for him. So we were at a crossroads of how to calm him down maybe. And by no means, obviously, I'm not a physician, I'm not on the medical side of it, but I had reached out to the daughter and asked, do you have any photo albums or things that we can go through? And I have time, and I went up on my lunch break, and I went into his room, and I gathered all his photo albums. And he wouldn't even sit down. He was just kind of walking around trying to sort things out. He had frontal lobe Alzheimer's. And so that's where they call it word salad. It's hard for you even to complete a sentence, and you know what you want to say, but you can't say it, and it's frustrating. So you try and redirect, basically, is what I've learned through the training that they've given me. And I sat down at the table and opened up all the photo albums, and we went right back to the very beginning of when he was a child. And what's really neat also, what they do here is they get the family to fill out forms telling us who they are, where they were born, how many siblings they had, where they grew up, what their parents did so we can go back and relate and tap into that memory that's still there, that long-term memory. And so I sat down and started going through the albums, and he was walking around me, and he would glance down and look briefly and go, yeah. And then I said, oh, well, who is this? Oh, and here's a picture of you. And he was a teenager, and he stopped. And he looked at the picture, and then as we were flipping through, he gradually sat down at the table with me and then started telling me who everybody was in these albums. And we spent an hour doing that. And by the end of it, he had relaxed, and you could tell that he had just kind of settled and calmed. And I recognized who he was. And it kind of clicked with me that, you know, our slogan is what remains is far more important than what is lost. And he looked at me and said, how did you know? How did you know that that was my dad and that was my mom? And it kind of gave him that sense of, you still know who I am. So we can separate the person from the disease in those moments. And that for me was just like, wow. It was just so cool to actually see that work.
Wow, you're so right. I mean, there's a fantastic play. I wish I could remember the name of it, but I think it's something along the it's called I'm Still Here. I don't know if you're familiar with the play itself, but they had it before Brendan Church was torn down, or Brecon Church, pardon me, was torn down to be residential care or some kind of apartment complex. I think it's senior housing, but I'm not sure. They came out of Victoria, and it was a group of 4 people that did this play. And that was the thing that was my major takeaway, is that the individual was still there. And sometimes people forget, right? Pardon the pun, but they forget that their parent is really still inside of this, situation that they may not have full control over.
Yes, exactly. And when you can find that connection with them, you can see their eyes light up.
Oh,
they're just wanting to see them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so heartwarming. What brought you to this work, Lianne?
I was really close with my grandparents, and they did not have dementia, but they went into a home together. They were married 65 years. They died 3 weeks apart from each other. And they were on the mainland, and I just saw what it did to my grandpa to be no longer independent. He said he lost all his dignity, having to have someone change him and shower him. And they were cognitively intact. So, and they were in a great place with great supports, but it was still just emotional watching what they went through. And how they had their world shrunk, and they got rid of their house, and they lost their driver's licenses, and could no longer be independent. And it just made me, I took my sales background, and I thought, how can I work in this industry to help people like my grandparents find the right community, make sure they're in the right place, navigate for the families, because it was very hard on my mom and her siblings to just sort through everything. The hows and the whys, and from there I got a job over here with Holiday Retirement, and then from there I came here. So it's been about 8 years I've been in this industry now, and I just love it. I just love everything about it. I love the seniors. I love helping someone, redirecting them. Even if we can't help them, I'll find them resources and send them off in the right direction, because it's such a stressful time. It's not like independent living. They're not coming here and just checking it out. Something's happened. There's been an incident and a caregiver burnout, and they just need somebody to say, it's okay. These are your options. We can help. If we can't, I'll set you in the right direction. So it's just always been my thing. It's just, I don't feel like it's work, honestly.
Well, that's, the best kind of work, is to not feel like you're working any day of your life. I share that joy, so I know what you mean. I'm curious, you really did point out something that was so very important, in that it's a common reality for older adults to be married for a very long period of time and then find that one or the other is caregiving each other. And I'm curious, does Avenir I have a twofold question. The first question, is there anything you can do to plan for it? And the second question is, does Avenir order or have respite?
Yes, we have respite. That's just opened up again since COVID. It wasn't. We do respite. I think it's a week minimum plus. Our leases are only month to month. So in some cases, someone might need a 1 to 3 month break. Someone might be, well, not anymore, but we used to have partners that would travel, go, this one gentleman would go on a fishing trip every year, so his wife would come with us. She was a regular respite. And we also accommodate couples. We keep couples together in their own room, or if they want separate rooms, we keep them on the same floor, a couple of suites down from each other. And that's a difficult thing for a lot of complex care to do. It's something that we wanted to do right from the design of the building. We created double suites so that a companion can come and stay with them. We've had couples move in where one has dementia and the other doesn't, but they've, like you said, been married together for so long that the companion will come with them. And then one will progress and pass away, and then by then the other ones reach the age level where they now need that care. And second floor, beginning stage, if the companion is with them, that's usually where they end up. So they're still supporting their loved one, but they no longer have to worry about their safety, make their meals, do their showering, so they can go back to being the partner.
Which is really, as you said, is unheard of. You don't see it very often at all. Yeah. Going back to the first part of the question, certainly dementia and dementia as the umbrella, Alzheimer's being one of the many that fall underneath that umbrella. Is there anything that people can do to plan for that, or how, how do people navigate that from the very beginning? Is there a trend that you have noticed that people tend to follow, or how does it work?
Well, usually the family closest to them will start noticing something's happening. You should start with your GP. Hopefully he can do his own assessment and refer you to a geriatric psychiatrist. Ideally, if you can get a CT scan so you have a baseline to see what's happening in the brain. Usually by the time you've seen symptoms, like I said, it's been years before that. There's changes and atrophy in the brain. So getting a scan is important. But I think the first step, obviously families try and keep their loved ones home as long as they can. So I see a lot of families, when they've come to me, they already have some home care to alleviate the caregivers. So someone will come in and do showering or spend time with them so that they can get out of the house. They can go grocery shopping, they can have a break, go have a coffee with a friend. And you can achieve that through private companies like Bayshore, We Care, or you can do that through Vancouver Health Authority. So there's really just the two options. There's private care for your home, for communities, and then there's Vancouver Health Authority. So usually they've got friends, family, home care coming in, and then it gets to the point where it's no longer safe for them to be in the home, even with home care, then they usually come to me. Or they're in independent living, and they no longer fit that criteria, and then they come to me. So like I said, it's not like by the time they come to me, there's no kicking tires. They need the support. Something has progressed.
Yeah, absolutely.
To that point, safe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like going to somewhere like Lakeside or Berwick or some of the independent living homes that we have here, or residential independent care, right? But being that it's people have to come at that point, are there subsidized spaces in your facility, or no? Are you considered private or partially public?
We're all private, so we have 83 beds. We have gone down that road and probably will continue to go down that road to apply for them. We have applied in the past. I guess Vancouver Health, they give out, I believe, so many beds. And I think the communities that already have the beds may be awarded extra. I'm not exactly clear on how it works, but I know that we haven't been allocated any yet. And there are criteria around that. So you have to have certain lists, and you have to have certain type of tub in your tub room and things like that. So I think we're looking and still always looking to have that nice balance. So maybe down the road we will, but right now we're just private.
So now I'm to understand there's a fabulous new building being built behind you. Is it connected to Avenir? Is it part of Avenir, or is it a separate building altogether that just happens to be super close by?
No, it's Avenir, and it's going to be independent and assisted living. It's going to be right on the lakefront here. They're still working on prepping the land. You're going to be able to purchase units as well. It sounds like it's going to be amazing. ILs are always so fun. I mean, you've got the movie theaters and saltwater pools, and I believe we're going to be right on the lake. So we're looking forward to that, because then it'll be a natural, you'll have all your services side by side, independent, AL, and memory care. So it's going to be a perfect little package.
I think it's going to be gorgeous if you're right on the lake. I didn't even actually realize, and I've been to your building, but I didn't really realize that you were kind of right on the lake. Or kitty corner. What I remember of the building when I was there is there was a bunch of trees behind you. And so I'm assuming that that's the lot that goes onto Long Lake or Lakes. What is that? It is Long Lake. Yeah.
Long Lake.
I've been here now. We should know this. I've lived in Nanaimo for 11 years this fall. And I still am like blubber as to where the name of some of the locations and some of the things that we're doing. How do people reach you, Lianne?
So they can call me directly at 250-585-3788, or they can go onto our website, which is www.avenirseniorliving.com. And on there, they can email me as well. It'll come directly to me, and they can look at our pictures of the suites, the rooms. There's a video of our community because it's hard to tour. We will be opening up touring again just on the main floor, just to the show suite. Pretty much that's it. I'm back out. But that's why I take a lot of pictures. I provide a video, and we can go over everything when they call me.
Yeah, it's definitely a place that, it's beyond words. You have to actually go there and see. It really does feel like you're in a high-end condo. It's like really very beautiful. The suites are lovely, individual suites. I'm curious, if somebody does move into your area, a lot of people, I mean, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I know some of the other care facilities have, is that, some older people are somewhat hoarders. What are people allowed to bring with them when they come and stay at Avenir?
Yeah, that's true. Downsizing from the home is difficult. If they have a partner and the partner's still staying in the home, it's okay. But a lot of people, once they know they're settled in a place like ours, they eventually sell their home and they put that money into a nest egg, and that's there to take care of them. So our suites are great. So we have a lot of people coming out of province that don't want to pay $3,000-$4,000 to move their stuff. So we do provide a furnished suite. So it comes with a bed and table, lamp, and a chair. But I always encourage people, even though we supply all the bedding and all the linen, make it your own. You can hang up pictures, put up drapes. You can bring your own comforter. If you have a special bed or need a hospital bed, that can be placed in the room as well. But then some people go crazy and they paint and they put up curtains and a flat screen on the wall. They do it all. And then some people are like, no, I'm good. I'm just going to have this. So we encourage you can make the room your own. It's your home. It's like your own apartment. You just have full services and 24-hour care. So some of the rooms are pretty amazing. A lot of the men don't care about the frills. They might have fishing pictures or their golf clubs in the corner. They don't care.
That's so true. The best of women are nesters, though. We like to, no, I don't think it matters how old you are. I think that, women in particular, and I'm sure probably quite sexist, but it is true that women more than men like to put their stuff around them. I know I certainly do like having nice things around me for sure. We're coming to the part of the program, my favorite part of the program, when I ask if you could give someone in the community a teaching, a life lesson in your experience over the last 8 years through your career and working with older adults, and in particular in the last 4 or 5 years working with memory loss and memory care, what would you like to imbibe on the community from your standpoint? Not so much, I mean, yes, Avenir for sure, but your life
Mhm.
teachings, like what have you really learned from all of this?
I learned, well, a couple of things. I think for the families that have a loved one who has dementia, to be easy on yourself. Don't wait till you're burnt out. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and you're reaching out for support. And for the and also for the people that have dementia themselves, for people to realize that these people are going through frustrations we can't even imagine. Their sense of feel, their pain reactions, their vision, their stance, how they walk, everything is affected. Someone explained it to me, I actually think it was Jane Hope. Years ago, she did a presentation and she said, you know, you see a duck floating along the water and it looks all calm and peaceful and they're going in the direction they want to go in, but underneath their feet are paddling like crazy. And that reminds me of people with dementia. It may seem like they're the ones that are especially mobile and physically look well and they're coming down and having a conversation and, oh, mom's doing really great today. It's taking everything in them because they want to appear normal. They don't want you to realize how hard they're struggling. And so I always think of that duck that's just cruising along, but underneath they're paddling like crazy. And that stuck with me. And our seniors don't want to be talked to like children. These are people that have lived a life and been judges and police officers and nurses and engineers and gardeners and fathers and grandfathers, and they've lived through the last 100 years of the biggest changes I think we're going to see. And they lived through it all. So they're amazing people that we tend to want to talk to, not intentionally, but kind of talk down to a little bit because they're struggling. You know, maybe talk louder thinking they're deaf, but they're really not deaf. You just need to talk slower, have more patience, and just show them that respect. Because I remember my grandpa too told me, I don't know why the nurses baby talk to me. And I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, oh, hi, Tom, how are you? And he's like, just talk to me like I'm, you know, Mr. Johnson. I can hear you. I understand what's going on. So those are the two things I think. Take care of yourself if you're a caregiver and have that patience with your senior because they're struggling more than what they're showing us sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice and so very, very true. And I've watched so many older adults get very frustrated with themselves because they're not able to do some of the things that, you know, that we take for granted. They, you know, even signing their name on a piece of paper for some can be very, very challenging, but, you know, they're very stoic quite often. They don't want people to see just how the struggle truly is. Yeah, I think you make a very, very good point that we need to stop infantiling people as well. You know, just because somebody is a little slower, it takes a bit more time to do something, doesn't mean that they're a child.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, another good support I was going to say when you mentioned the Alzheimer Society, there is a Dementia Helpline that First Link, which is sponsored through the Alzheimer Society, that allows you to find support groups. It helps you get a diagnosis. It starts you plan for the future. It's a 1-800 number that you can call when you just need to vent and have someone to talk to. So if I can, I'll give you the phone number for the public.
Please do. Yeah, that'd be great. By all means.
So it's the First Link Dementia Helpline, and it's 1-800-936-6033. And it's free and it's an amazing service.
Would you mind repeating that number one more time for us, please?
Sure, it's 1-800-936-6033.
Wonderful. I really appreciate your fantastic time today and sharing your wisdom. I have one more question. Even though I know we kind of moved towards the close, I just wonder about one thing that you did bring up when you were talking about your life lesson. You reminded me how easily it is for people to get very frustrated with someone who has Alzheimer's and dementia. And I just wanted to point out that the BCCRN, or the BC Critical Response Network, is also available for people. It is not uncommon for older adults to find themselves in an abusive situation because of their frustrations and because of what's going on with their body, and maybe not recognize that in fact family members or people that are close to them, caregivers, support people, can at times be very abusive because they've not come to terms with the difference in learning between what's happening for them as individuals and what's, like you said, the duck that's swimming so rapidly underneath the water. And so I'm curious about your take on that patience level. What kind of, can you offer some wisdom for people that might find themselves frustrated?
Well, that's why I think they need to educate themselves and reach out for support. So make sure they're tag teaming with another family member, get in some home care, call the helpline. Vancouver Island Health Authority can help them with resources. A lot of them are free or funded or private, but even having, I find here a lot of our families are really close with their neighbors too. So if they're in a neighborhood where they've been living there forever, reach out to the neighbor. If some of the children don't live here in Nanaimo, so they're trying to do this remotely as well and find support, just make sure that you're asking for help, because it's hard. Like the families that are supporting people with dementia, my hat's off to them, because it is a challenging, sad job at times. They're going through a loss and they're having to care for someone that's not on board a lot of the time because of their cognitive decline. They don't want to leave the house. They don't want help to come in. They want to shut themselves in their homes and never leave. And so there's so many levels of challenges that these families are dealing with. So just reach out and ask for help.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, fantastic advice. Thank you, my friend. Lianne Ketcheson has been with us today. She is with Avenir Memory Care. You need to talk to this woman. She knows what she's talking about. So give her a call. Lianne, how do people reach you?
They can call me directly at 250-585-3788 or go on to our website, www.avenirseniorliving.com.
How do you spell Avenir, just for those that may be trying to sound it out?
Yes, it's Avenir.
Wonderful. So www.avenir
Senior Living.
I'll let you do it. See, I'm having a moment. I'm having a short-term memory moment just as we speak.
Yeah, www.avenirseniorliving.com.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lianne. Ladies and gentlemen, that does it for this episode of Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. Hey, by the way, our first episode of Act 3 television is now up after months of wait and anticipation. It is finally available. So please do make sure that you tune in. You can find us on Shaw Cable 4 all over Vancouver Island, and hopefully soon the province, and then all of Canada. That's the hope anyway. That's the dream. But be sure to tune in, because there's tons of information there and it's a lot of fun. So we're glad that you turn into today's program. We'll see you next week on Act 3 on CHLY 101.7. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Take care.